Maya Chen sat in the back corner of Advanced Military Strategy class, her eyes fixed on her tablet while Professor Vance droned on about theoretical battle formations. Around her, the children of generals and admirals debated loudly, their voices filled with the confidence that came from growing up in military families. Maya said nothing. She never said anything. "Miss Chen," Professor Vance's voice cut through the classroom chatter. "Perhaps you'd like to share your thoughts on the Kepler Station defense scenario." 23 pairs of eyes turned toward Maya. She felt her cheeks burn as she looked up from her notes. The scenario they'd been discussing was a classic: how to defend a mining station against a superior enemy force. The standard textbook answer involves strategic withdrawal and calling for reinforcements. Maya's voice came out as barely a whisper. Someone in the front row snickered. "Speak up, Chen," called Marcus Steele, the son of Admiral Steele. "Some of us can't hear you back there in the cheap seats." More laughter rippled through the classroom. Maya's hands trembled as she gripped her tablet. She wanted to disappear, to melt into her chair and become invisible. But Professor Vance was still waiting, his eyebrows raised expectantly. "The textbook says to retreat and wait for backup," Maya managed, her voice slightly stronger. "And do you agree with the textbook?" Professor Vance asked. Maya hesitated. She'd been thinking about this scenario for weeks, running simulations in her head during sleepless nights. The standard answer felt wrong to her, wasteful of resources and human life. But disagreeing with established military doctrine in a room full of future officers seemed like academic suicide. "I think," she started, then stopped. Marcus was already turning back to his friends, dismissing her before she could even finish. The familiar weight of invisibility settled over her shoulders like a blanket. "Never mind," she whispered. Professor Vance frowned but moved on to another student. Maya sank deeper into her chair, grateful to fade back into the background where she belonged. After class, Maya gathered her things slowly, waiting for the room to empty. She had no friends to walk with, no study groups to join. Her scholarship to the prestigious Terra Military Academy was her ticket off the poverty-stricken mining colony where she'd grown up. But it also marked her as an outsider among the elite students who saw the academy as their birthright. "Chen." Professor Vance's voice stopped her at the door. A moment, Maya's stomach dropped. Had she done something wrong? Failed some assignment? She turned back reluctantly. "Your written work is exceptional," Professor Vance said, settling behind his desk. "Your analysis of historical battles shows real insight. But in class discussions, I know I'm not very good at speaking up," Maya said quickly. "I'm working on it." "It's not about being good at it," Professor Vance replied. "It's about having something to say. And I suspect you have quite a lot to say if you'd let yourself." Maya shifted uncomfortably. The other students, they know so much more than I do. Their families have been in the military for generations. I'm just a mining colony kid who got lucky on the entrance exam. "Luck had nothing to do with your test scores," Professor Vance said firmly. "You earned your place here. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Maya nodded, though she didn't really believe it. She'd heard the whispers about scholarship students, about how they lowered the academy's standards. As she left the classroom, she caught sight of Marcus Steele holding court in the hallway, regaling his friends with tales of his father's latest military campaign. "So Dad tells the Zentari ambassador," Marcus was saying, his voice carrying the practiced confidence of someone who'd never doubted his place in the world. "Either you surrender the contested systems or we'll take them by force." The bugs folded immediately, of course. They always do when faced with real military pressure. Maya hurried past, but Marcus's words followed her. Everyone knew about the growing tensions with the Zentari Empire. The insectoid aliens had been expanding aggressively, claiming systems along the border between human and Zentari space. Each diplomatic meeting ended in stalemate, with both sides becoming more entrenched in their positions. In her small dormitory room, Maya pulled up news feeds on her personal computer. The situation was worse than most students realized. 3 more border colonies had gone silent in the past month. Long-range sensors detected massive Zentari fleet movements. Military analysts were predicting war within the year. Maya had grown up on one of those border colonies. She knew what it meant when mining operations went silent. It meant families torn apart, children orphaned, entire communities wiped out. The thought made her stomach clench with familiar anxiety. She opened her military strategy textbooks and began to read, losing herself in battle plans and tactical analyses. This was where she felt safe, in the abstract world of numbers and scenarios where her background didn't matter. Here, she could think clearly without the weight of others' expectations or judgment. Hours passed as Maya worked through practice scenarios, her mind running calculations and possibilities. She found herself returning again and again to the Kepler station defense problem from class. The standard retreat and regroup strategy felt wrong because it abandoned the civilians who couldn't evacuate quickly. Mining stations weren't just military outposts, they were homes to thousands of families. Maya began sketching alternative approaches on her tablet. What if instead of retreating, you could turn the station's mining equipment into weapons? What if you used the asteroid field itself as cover? What if... A soft chime from her computer interrupted her thoughts. New message from Academy administration. Maya's heart sank as she opened it, expecting some bureaucratic notice about scholarship requirements or academic probation. Instead, she found orders for immediate deployment. All final-year students are hereby reassigned to active duty stations effective immediately. The Zentari Empire has declared war on the Terran Federation. Report to Transport Base 7 at 600 tomorrow for assignment to available vessels. Maya stared at the message, reading it 3 times before the words sank in. War. Real war. Not classroom exercises or theoretical scenarios. In 18 hours, she would be on a ship heading toward the front lines, where her textbook knowledge would be tested against actual enemy forces. She thought about her parents on the mining colony, about whether they were safe. She thought about Marcus Steele and the other students who'd been preparing for this moment their entire lives. And she thought about herself, the quiet girl from nowhere who'd somehow earned a place among the future leaders of humanity's military. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tonight, she was still nobody. The transport ship hummed with nervous energy as 200 Academy graduates hurtled through space toward their first assignments. Maya pressed her face against the small porthole, watching stars streak past in hyperspace. In 6 hours, they would drop out near the front lines where the Zentari had begun their assault on human space. Attention, graduates, the ship's captain announced over the intercom. We're receiving updated assignment rosters. Report to your designated briefing rooms for orders. Maya checked her tablet and groaned. Briefing room C, the same room where Marcus Steele and his crowd had gathered. She'd hoped to avoid them for the entire journey, but apparently the universe had other plans. When she slipped into the room, she found 30 other graduates already seated. Marcus sat in the front row naturally, surrounded by his usual followers. Maya chose a seat in the back, as always, and waited for the briefing to begin. Commander Torres, a weathered veteran with cybernetic implants covering half her face, entered the room carrying a stack of data pads. Ladies and gentlemen, you're being assigned to the TFS Relentless, a heavy cruiser currently engaged in defensive operations along the Kepler sector. The ship has taken significant casualties and needs fresh officers immediately. Maya's blood ran cold. The Kepler sector, that was where her home colony was located. The Zentari have proven more aggressive than our intelligence predicted, Commander Torres continued. They're not just taking military targets. They're systematically destroying civilian infrastructure, mining colonies, research stations. No prisoners, no negotiations, a hand shot up from the front row. Marcus, of course. Commander, what's our tactical assessment of Zentari capabilities? My father's report suggested they were primarily a defensive force. Commander Torres's expression darkened. Your father's reports were wrong, Cadet Steele. The Zentari have advanced significantly since our last major engagement. Their ships are faster, better armed, and they fight with a coordination we've never seen before. They're not the simple-minded bugs our textbooks described. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. She'd studied every available report on Zentari tactics, and they'd always been portrayed as individualistic fighters who relied on superior numbers rather than strategy. If that had changed, Cadet Chen, Commander Torres's voice made Maya jump. You're from the Kepler sector originally, correct? Every head in the room turned toward Maya. She felt her face burn with embarrassment as she nodded. Yes, ma'am. New Yangzhou colony. Good, you'll be assigned to the navigation department. Your local knowledge of the asteroid fields could prove valuable. Marcus turned in his seat, a smirk playing across his lips. Navigation? That's usually where they put the washouts. Cadet Steele, Commander Torres said sharply. You'll be assigned to the weapons department. Try not to blow up the ship on your first day. The rest of the briefing passed in a blur of technical specifications and tactical updates. Maya tried to focus, but her mind kept wandering to her parents and younger brother on New Yangzhou. The colony had a population of just over 10,000, mostly miners and their families. It wasn't a military target, but according to Commander Torres, the Zentari weren't making distinctions. After the briefing, Maya hurried toward the transport's communication bay. She had to try reaching her family, had to know if they were safe. But when she accessed the long-range communications array, she found the channels to the Kepler sector were completely dark. No signals, no responses, nothing. System maintenance, a tech sergeant explained when Maya asked. Been down for 3 days. Should be back online soon. But Maya had read enough military reports to know what communication blackouts usually meant. Either the relay stations had been destroyed, or there was no one left to send signals. The dropout of hyperspace was violent, throwing everyone against their restraints as the ship's artificial gravity fluctuated. Through the portholes, Maya could see the TFS Relentless hanging in space like a wounded animal. Scorch marks covered its hull, and entire sections appeared to be sealed off with emergency barriers. Welcome to the war, graduates, Commander Torres announced as they prepared to transfer to the cruiser. Remember your training, follow orders, and maybe some of you will live to see home again. The Relentless's hangar bay was a scene of controlled chaos. Damage control teams rushed between shuttles, medics carried wounded crew members to sick bay, and officers shouted orders over the noise of machinery and alarms. Maya clutched her assignment pad and tried to find someone who could tell her where to report. You look lost, Cadet. A tall woman with lieutenant's bars on her collar appeared beside Maya. I'm Lieutenant Park, Navigation Department. You must be our new local expert. Maya nodded, grateful to find someone friendly. Yes, ma'am. Cadet Chen reporting for duty. Good timing. We just lost our sector navigation specialist to a Zentari boarding party yesterday. Captain Reeves wants to see you on the bridge immediately. As they walked through the ship's corridors, Lieutenant Park explained the situation. We've been fighting a running battle for 5 days. The Zentari hit 3 colonies simultaneously, then disappeared into the asteroid fields. We're trying to predict their next target, but they're not following any tactical pattern we recognize. The bridge was smaller than Maya had expected, packed with crew members hunched over sensor displays and tactical readouts. At the center sat Captain Reeves, a stern-faced woman in her 50s who looked like she hadn't slept in days. Cadet Chen, Captain Reeves said without looking up from her command console. I need you to study these sensor readings and tell me where the Zentari are hiding. Maya approached the tactical display, her hands shaking slightly as she accessed the navigation controls. The display showed the local asteroid field in 3 dimensions, with dozens of potential hiding spots marked in red. Standard military doctrine would suggest the Zentari were using the largest asteroids for cover, but something about the pattern felt wrong. Captain, Maya said hesitantly. Permission to ask about the attack patterns? Granted. The colonies that were hit, they weren't the most valuable targets in the sector. New Shanghai has twice the population and better infrastructure than New Yangzhou. But they hit the smaller colony first, and they completely bypassed the military depot on Asteroid Station 7. Captain Reeves turned to face Maya directly. Go on. Maya's mind raced as she studied the tactical display. The pieces were there, but she needed to see the pattern. What if they're not trying to cause maximum damage? What if they're trying to create maximum fear? Hit the isolated colonies first, the ones that can't defend themselves. Make the others panic and call for help. A psychological warfare strategy, Lieutenant Park murmured. Draw our forces out of position. Exactly, Maya said, gaining confidence. And if that's true, then they're not hiding in the asteroid field at all. She manipulated the display, zooming out to show the entire sector. They're here in the shadow of the gas giant, waiting for us to spread ourselves thin looking for them. Captain Reeves studied the display for a long moment. That's either brilliant tactical analysis or completely wrong, Cadet. Unfortunately, we're about to find out which one. She turned to the communications officer. Signal the fleet. New course heading 27 Mark 4. We're going hunting. As the Relentless changed course toward the gas giant, Maya felt a mixture of terror and excitement. For the first time in her life, someone was listening to her ideas, taking them seriously. But if she was wrong, she might have just led an entire fleet into a trap. Through the view screen, the gas giant grew larger, its swirling storms masking whatever might be hidden in its shadow. Somewhere out there, the Zentari were waiting. And somewhere in this sector, her family might still be alive depending on the decisions she helped make in the next few hours. The quiet girl from the back of the classroom was about to face her first real test. The bridge fell silent as the Relentless approached the gas giant's shadow. Maya stood beside the tactical display, her heart pounding so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. If she was wrong about the Zentari fleet's location, she would be responsible for wasting precious time while colonies burned. "Sensor sweep complete," reported the scanning officer. "I'm reading—" "Wait." His voice changed, becoming sharp with alarm. "Contact!" Multiple contacts in the giant's magnetosphere. Centauri signatures, at least 40 vessels. Captain Reeves looked at Maya with something that might have been respect. "Well done, cadet. Now comes the hard part." She turned to her crew. "Battle stations? Signal the fleet. We've found them." Maya watched in fascination as the bridge transformed. Officers moved with practiced efficiency, their earlier casual conversation replaced by crisp, professional communication. Status reports flowed in from all departments. Weapon systems powered up. Shield generators hummed to life. "Captain," the communications officer called out, "Admiral Chen is requesting tactical assessment." Maya blinked in surprise. Admiral Chen shared her surname, but that was probably just coincidence. Chen was a common name among the mining colonies. Captain Reeves activated the main viewer, and Admiral Chen's face appeared on screen. Maya gasped. She was looking at an older version of herself. The same high cheekbones, the same thoughtful eyes, even the same way of tilting her head when concentrating. "Admiral," Captain Reeves said, "we've located the Zentari fleet hidden in the gas giant's shadow. Estimated 40 vessels, including at least 6 heavy cruisers." Admiral Chen nodded, but her eyes were fixed on Maya. "And who do we have to thank for this discovery?" "Cadet Chen, ma'am. Recent Academy graduate assigned to navigation." Maya felt the blood drain from her face as Admiral Chen's expression changed to one of recognition and something else. Pride, perhaps mixed with worry. "Chen," the Admiral said carefully, "what colony are you from?" "New Yangzhou, Admiral," Maya managed to whisper. Admiral Chen closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, they were filled with pain. "Maya, my daughter." The bridge crew turned to stare, but Maya could barely process their reaction. Her mother who had left 10 years ago to pursue a military career, who had sent letters and credits but never visited, who had become a stranger, was here, commanding the fleet that might save or doom her home. "Admiral," Captain Reeves said gently, "perhaps we should discuss tactics." Admiral Chen straightened, becoming the professional officer again. "Of course. Captain, the Zentari outnumber us 2-1, but they don't know we've spotted them. I'm ordering a coordinated strike. All ships target their command vessels simultaneously." Maya found her voice. "Wait." Every eye on the bridge turned to her. "I mean, with respect, Admiral, that might not be the best approach." Captain Reeves raised an eyebrow. "Cadet, you're addressing a fleet admiral." "It's all right, Captain," Admiral Chen said. "Continue, Maya." Maya's hand shook as she manipulated the tactical display. "The Zentari aren't just hiding randomly. Look at their formation." She highlighted the enemy ships in different colors. They're arranged in a defensive pattern around something. Not their command ships, something else. She zoomed in on the center of the Zentari formation. "There, those aren't warships. They're transport vessels. They're protecting something or someone." "Prisoners," Lieutenant Park breathed. "They're using human prisoners as shields." Maya's stomach clenched. "Civilians from the colonies they attacked. If we strike their formation directly, we'll hit the transports too." Admiral Chen's face was grim. "Then what do you suggest, Cadet?" Maya stared at the tactical display, her mind racing through possibilities. Everything she'd learned at the academy said to attack the enemy's strongest point, destroy their command structure. But the Zentari had made that impossible by surrounding their commanders with human shields. "The gas giant," she said suddenly. "Its magnetic field is what's hiding their ships from long-range sensors. But it's also what's keeping their formation so tight. If we could disrupt the field, how?" Captain Reeves asked. Maya's fingers flew over the tactical controls, pulling up data on the gas giant's composition. "Plasma charges. 3 ships, simultaneous detonation in the magnetosphere. It would create an electromagnetic pulse that disrupts their sensors and communications, but it wouldn't damage the ships directly." leaving them blind and scattered. Admiral Chen mused. We could pick off their escorts without risking the transports. It's risky, Captain Reeves warned. The ships deploying the plasma charges would be sitting ducks during the approach. Maya looked at her mother's face on the screen. I volunteer to pilot one of the attack ships. Absolutely not, Admiral Chen said immediately. You're a navigation specialist, not a pilot. I know these asteroid fields better than anyone, Maya countered. I can use them for cover during the approach and... She hesitated, then pressed on. I'm expendable. If we lose me, the mission can still succeed. If we lose experienced pilots, it might fail. The bridge was silent except for the hum of the ship's systems. Maya could see the conflict in her mother's eyes. The admiral who needed to make tactical decisions, and the mother who had just found her daughter again. Captain Reeves, Admiral Chen said finally, what's your assessment of Cadet Chen's plan? Tactically sound, Captain Reeves admitted. But I agree about the risk to the plasma charge teams. Then we modify it, Admiral Chen decided. 3 ships as planned, but with our best pilots. Maya, you'll coordinate from the Relentless. Use your knowledge of the asteroid field to guide them through the safest approach routes. Maya wanted to argue, but she could see the decision was final. Instead, she nodded and began pulling up detailed charts of the asteroid field, marking safe passages and potential hiding spots. 20 minutes later, 3 fast attack ships launched from the fleet, their hulls gleaming in the gas giant's reflected light. Maya watched them disappear into the asteroid field, guided by her navigation data and her intimate knowledge of every rock and mining tunnel in the sector. First ship in position, came the report. Second ship in position. Third ship. We're taking fire. Centauri patrol found us. On the tactical display, Maya watched as enemy fighters swarmed toward the third attack ship. The pilot was good, but outnumbered 5-1. In seconds, he would be overwhelmed. There, Maya said, highlighting a path on the display. Mining Tunnel 77 Alpha. It leads directly through the asteroid to the far side. He can lose them in there. Negative, came the pilot's voice. Tunnel's too narrow for a combat ship. Maya closed her eyes, remembering her childhood spent in those tunnels, the mining pods that were barely larger than a person. Trust me, she said into the communicator. I used to play in those tunnels. You can make it. Seconds passed. Then I'm through. Deploying plasma charges now. On the main viewer, 3 brilliant flashes erupted in the gas giant's atmosphere. The effect was immediate. Centauri ships began appearing on sensors as their stealth systems failed, and their tight formation started to break apart as commanders lost contact with their subordinates. All ships. Attack pattern Delta, Admiral Chen ordered. Target the escort vessels only. Repeat. Do not fire on the transports. The space battle that followed was unlike anything Maya had seen in simulations. Centauri ships, their usual coordination disrupted, fought as individuals rather than a unified force. Human ships, smaller but more maneuverable, darted between asteroids and picked off isolated enemies. But the Centauri weren't helpless. As their communications came back online, they began to adapt, using the transport ships as mobile cover and forcing human vessels to break off attacks to avoid hitting prisoners. They're regrouping, Lieutenant Park reported. If they get their full formation back together. Maya studied the tactical display, looking for any advantage they could exploit. The Centauri were good, better than the textbooks had suggested, but they were still thinking like the bugs everyone said they were. They were protecting their valuable assets by keeping them close. What if we gave them something more valuable to protect? Maya said suddenly. Captain Reeves looked at her. Explain. A command ship. If we could make them think Admiral Chen's flagship was disabled and vulnerable, they might break formation to capture it. That would expose the transports. Too risky. Admiral Chen's voice came from the communicator. We can't risk the command structure of the entire fleet. But Maya was already working at the tactical console, pulling up specifications for the Relentless. Not the real flagship, this ship. We fake critical damage, make it look like we're dead in space. When they come to investigate, we're not a flagship, Captain Reeves pointed out. No, Maya said with a growing smile. But they don't know that, and when they get close enough to realize their mistake, it'll be too late. On the main viewer, Admiral Chen's expression was thoughtful. Captain Reeves, your assessment? Captain Reeves looked at Maya, then at her crew. It could work. But if we're wrong about their reaction, then we die, Maya finished. But if we're right, we save thousands of prisoners and win the battle. The quiet girl who had never spoken up in class was asking her mother to bet everything on her plan. When Admiral Chen's face appeared on screen, Maya could see tears in her eyes. "Well done, Captain. Well done, everyone." Her gaze found Maya. "Especially you, my brilliant daughter." For the first time since the war started, Maya smiled. The quiet girl from the back of the classroom had just helped win a major victory. But as she looked at the unconscious Zentari soldier at her feet, she realized this was only the beginning. The aliens were smarter and more dangerous than anyone had expected, and somehow she had become one of the people responsible for fighting them. 3 weeks after the rescue at the gas giant, Maya found herself in a place she never expected to be: the intelligence briefing room aboard Admiral Chen's flagship. The rescued prisoners had provided disturbing information about Zentari capabilities, and suddenly everyone wanted to hear from the young officer who had outmaneuvered an entire enemy fleet. "The prisoners confirm our worst fears," Admiral Chen was saying to the assembled officers. "The Zentari aren't just more advanced than we thought. They're actively adapting to our tactics. They've been studying human behavior for months, maybe years before this war started." Maya sat at the far end of the conference table, still uncomfortable with being included in such high-level discussions. Around her, seasoned commanders and intelligence specialists debated strategy. She recognized some faces from Academy textbooks, legends like Admiral Harrison and General Morrison, officers whose victories were studied in classrooms across human space. "How do we know the intelligence is reliable?" asked Colonel Vance, Maya's former professor who had somehow ended up as a field intelligence officer. "Prisoners under stress often provide inaccurate information." "Because of this," Admiral Chen replied, activating the holographic display at the center of the table. "We found it aboard one of the captured Zentari vessels." The display showed a three-dimensional map of human space, but it wasn't like any military chart Maya had ever seen. Individual colonies were marked not with strategic value assessments, but with detailed psychological profiles. Mining colonies were labeled as high fear, potential. Research stations were marked as intellectual curiosity, vectors. Military bases were categorized by command hierarchy, rigidity. "They've been profiling us," Admiral Chen continued. "Not our military capabilities, our psychological weaknesses. They know exactly which colonies will panic under attack, which commanders will make emotional rather than logical decisions, which civilian populations will pressure their governments to surrender." Maya studied the display with growing horror. Every human strength had been cataloged and turned into a potential weakness. The Zentari hadn't just been preparing for war. They'd been preparing to break humanity's will to fight. "There's more," Admiral Chen said grimly. She manipulated the display to show a different view. "Personnel files. They have detailed profiles on military officers, including psychological assessments and predicted behavior patterns." Maya's breath caught as she saw her own face appear among the profiles. According to the Zentari assessment, she was classified as low confidence, high analytical capability, family attachment exploitable. The file included details about her parents, her academic performance, even her social isolation at the academy. "How?" she whispered. "That's what we need to find out," Admiral Chen replied. "Someone has been feeding the Zentari detailed intelligence about our military and civilian populations. We have a spy problem." The room erupted in discussion. Officers accused each other of security lapses. Intelligence specialists demanded access to communication records. Everyone had theories about how the breach had occurred. Maya remained silent, her mind working through the implications. The Zentari psychological profiles were too detailed, too accurate to have been gathered through passive observation. Someone with access to military personnel files, academy records, and civilian databases had been actively collaborating. "Admiral," she said finally, raising her hand tentatively. The room fell silent. Maya felt the weight of dozens of stares, but she pressed on. "Permission to ask about the timing of intelligence gathering?" "Granted." Maya stood and approached the holographic display. "These files, when were they last updated?" She manipulated the controls, searching through the data timestamps. "Look at this. My profile was updated 3 days after the Academy graduation ceremony. But the war didn't start until 6 weeks later." Colonel Vance leaned forward. "What are you suggesting, Cadet?" The spy isn't someone who turned during the war, Maya said, her voice gaining strength. They've been working for the Zentari for months, possibly years, and they have access to academy records, which means it's someone inside the education system, Admiral Chen finished. Someone who's been identifying and profiling future officers before they even graduate. Maya nodded, then hesitated. There's something else. The psychological profiles focus heavily on family attachments and personal relationships. That's not standard military intelligence. It's more like what? General Morrison prompted. Like someone who's been observing us personally, someone who knows how we interact, how we form relationships, what motivates us beyond duty and training. The implication hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The spy wasn't just gathering data. They were someone who had been watching human officers develop, studying their personal lives and emotional attachments. We need to narrow down the suspects, Admiral Chen said. Colonel Vance, I want a complete review of Academy staff with access to student records. Cross-reference with anyone who had contact with the officers whose profiles are most detailed. As the meeting broke up into smaller working groups, Maya found herself approached by Captain Reeves. Good work in there, the older woman said. You're starting to find your voice, Maya smiled weakly. I'm still not comfortable with all this attention. Get used to it, Captain Reeves replied. Your tactical insights at the gas giant have made you something of a celebrity in intelligence circles. There are rumors that Admiral Chen is considering you for her personal staff. Maya's stomach dropped. I'm just a junior officer. I don't know anything about high-level strategy. Maybe not, Captain Reeves agreed. But you see patterns that others miss. And right now, that's exactly what we need. Over the following days, Maya found herself drawn deeper into the intelligence investigation. Her background as an outsider at the academy gave her a unique perspective on the social dynamics among officers and instructors. She noticed things that career military personnel took for granted. The breakthrough came when she was reviewing communication logs from the academy. Hidden among thousands of routine administrative messages, she found a pattern, small data packets being transmitted to an unknown recipient, always during major academy events when network traffic was heaviest. Professor Martinez, Maya said when she brought her findings to Colonel Vance. He's the only staff member who had access to all the compromised records, and the transmission times correspond to his class schedules. Colonel Vance frowned. Martinez has been at the academy for 15 years. Exemplary service record, strong recommendations from students and colleagues. What makes you suspect him? Maya pulled up the psychological profiles on her tablet. Look at how detailed these assessments are. They don't just include academic performance and test scores. They include observations about how students interact with their peers, their personal relationships, their emotional responses to stress. That level of detail requires someone who's been watching us closely for extended periods. That describes most academy instructors, Colonel Vance pointed out. Yes, but Martinez taught advanced psychological warfare. He would know exactly what information the Zentari would find valuable. And more importantly, Maya hesitated, then pressed on. He's the one who always encouraged quiet students to speak up. He made a point of drawing out the ones who normally stayed in the background. The memory came flooding back. Professor Martinez, after her disastrous attempt to answer a question in class, telling her that her insights were valuable, even if she lacked confidence to express them. At the time, she'd thought he was being kind. Now she wondered if he had been evaluating her psychological profile. It's not proof, Colonel Vance said, but it's enough for an investigation. We'll place Martinez under surveillance and monitor his communications. 3 days later, they had their answer. Professor Martinez was discovered attempting to transmit updated intelligence to a dead-drop satellite in the outer system. When confronted, he didn't deny his actions. You don't understand what you're fighting, he told his interrogators. The Zentari aren't conquerors, they're preservers. They study species to determine which ones are worth saving when the real threat arrives. Maya watched the interrogation through a one-way window. Admiral Chen beside her, the man who had taught her about psychological warfare, was calmly explaining that he had betrayed his own species for what he believed was humanity's survival. The devourers are coming, Martinez continued. The Zentari have been fighting them for centuries, studying other species to find allies strong enough to make a difference. Humanity's psychological resilience, our ability to adapt and overcome impossible odds, that's what caught their attention. So they decided to test us by starting a war? Admiral Chen asked through the interrogation system. By forcing us to evolve, Martinez replied. A species that can't defend itself against the Zentari would be helpless against the Devourers. But if we can prove our worth in battle, Maya felt sick. The entire war, all the death and destruction had been a test, and Professor Martinez had helped design the examination questions. There's one more thing, Martinez said, looking directly at the observation window as if he could see through it. The Zentari are particularly interested in certain individuals who show exceptional strategic thinking under pressure. They call them synthesis minds, beings capable of bridging the gap between different species' approaches to warfare. Admiral Chen's hand tightened on Maya's shoulder. They both knew who Martinez was talking about. Maya Chen was specifically identified as a synthesis mind during her academy years, Martinez continued. The Zentari have been waiting to see if she would fulfill that potential in actual combat. Maya stared at the man who had betrayed everything she believed in, and realized that even now, even in custody, he was still gathering intelligence. Her reaction to this revelation would be just as valuable to the Zentari as everything else he had observed. She straightened her shoulders and looked directly at the interrogation room camera. If the Zentari wanted to see how a synthesis mind responded to manipulation and betrayal, she would show them. Admiral, she said firmly, I request permission to lead a counterintelligence operation. If the Zentari think they understand human psychology, it's time we taught them how wrong they are. The quiet girl was done being studied. Now she was ready to become the teacher. Admiral Chen's flagship hummed with activity as Maya outlined her counterintelligence plan to the assembled senior staff. The conference room was packed with officers who had initially dismissed her as just another academy graduate, but who now hung on her every word. The Zentari think they understand human psychology, Maya said, manipulating the holographic display to show Martinez's intelligence files. They've built their entire strategy around our supposed predictability, but they've made a critical error. General Morrison leaned forward. Which is? They assume that understanding individual psychology means understanding human nature, Maya replied. Professor Martinez gave them detailed profiles of officers and civilians, but he couldn't give them the one thing that truly defines humanity, our ability to become something more than our individual limitations. She changed the display to show battle footage from the gas giant engagement. Look at what happened during the rescue operation. According to their profiles, Captain Reeves should have prioritized ship safety over mission success. I should have been too afraid to take risks. Lieutenant Park should have questioned orders from a junior officer. Maya paused, meeting the eyes of the officers around the table. But none of us acted according to our individual profiles. We became part of something larger, a crew working toward a common goal. The Zentari can predict what one human will do, but they can't predict what humans will do together. Admiral Chen nodded slowly. You're proposing we use their intelligence against them. Exactly, Maya said. We feed them false information through channels they don't know we've compromised. Make them think they understand our next moves, then do something completely unexpected. Colonel Vance, who had been studying the captured data files, looked up from his tablet. The Zentari intelligence network extends beyond Martinez. They have multiple assets throughout our military structure. If we can identify and turn some of them, we can create a feedback loop, Maya finished. Make them overconfident in their psychological assessments, while feeding them exactly the wrong information about our capabilities and intentions. Over the next week, Maya found herself leading a team of intelligence specialists in the most complex deception operation in human military history. They identified 17 potential Zentari assets through communication pattern analysis and behavioral profiling. Rather than arrest them, they began feeding them carefully crafted false intelligence. The key was making the deception psychologically believable. The fake intelligence had to match what the Zentari expected to hear, based on their human psychology profiles. An admiral with a risk-averse assessment received plans that emphasized defensive strategies. Officers marked as emotionally driven got intelligence about revenge operations against Zentari colonies. Maya worked 18-hour days, crafting each piece of false intelligence to match not just military requirements, but psychological expectations. It was exhausting work that required her to think like the enemy while staying true to human nature. You're pushing yourself too hard, Captain Reeves warned during one of Maya's brief breaks. When's the last time you slept more than 4 hours? Maya rubbed her tired eyes. The Zentari are planning something big. The intelligence patterns suggest they're massing forces for a major offensive. If we can't get our deception in place before they move, then other people will handle it, Captain Reeves said firmly. You're not responsible for winning the entire war by yourself. But Maya felt the weight of that responsibility anyway. The Zentari had identified her as a synthesis mind, someone capable of bridging different approaches to warfare. Whether she wanted it or not, she had become a key figure in humanity's survival. The test of their deception came sooner than expected. Zentari forces launched a massive assault on the Tau Ceti system, exactly as the false intelligence had predicted they would. But instead of finding the demoralized and unprepared human defenders the fake reports had described, they encountered Admiral Chen's fleet lying in wait. Maya watched the battle from the flagship's bridge, her heart pounding as the trap she had helped design unfolded. The Zentari attacked in formations perfectly suited to counter the defensive strategies their intelligence had predicted. When they encountered the actual human battle plan, an aggressive multi-vector assault that prioritized speed over caution, their coordination fell apart. They're adapting. Lieutenant Park reported from her position at the tactical console. Zentari command ships are changing formation, trying to counter our actual strategy. Maya studied the tactical display, watching the alien fleet struggle to adjust to unexpected circumstances. They're thinking like machines, she realized, processing new information and adjusting parameters. But they're not thinking like humans. She turned to Captain Reeves. Permission to take command of the fighter squadrons? You're not a pilot, Captain Reeves pointed out. I don't need to fly, Maya replied. I need to coordinate. The Zentari are adapting to our overall strategy, but they're still thinking in terms of logical tactical responses. Fighters are small enough to be unpredictable. Admiral Chen's voice came through the communication system. Maya, what do you have in mind? Chaos, Admiral, Maya said with a smile. Pure, glorious human chaos. Over the next hour, Maya coordinated the most unconventional fighter attack in military history. Instead of organized squadrons following predetermined flight paths, she sent pilots on seemingly random missions, attacking supply ships when they should have targeted command vessels, breaking off successful attacks to help friendly units that weren't actually in danger, regrouping in formations that made no tactical sense. To human observers, it looked like complete disorder. To the Zentari, trying to predict and counter each move, it was incomprehensible. Their adaptive algorithms couldn't process tactics that had no logical pattern. Zentari fleet is withdrawing, came the report from the scanning officer. They're falling back to the outer system. Maya slumped in her chair, exhausted but triumphant. The deception had worked better than she had dared hope. But as she watched the alien ships retreat, she noticed something troubling in their withdrawal pattern. They're not running, she said suddenly. They're regrouping. Look at the formation. It's not a retreat, it's a strategic repositioning. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the main viewer. Explain. Maya highlighted the Zentari ships on the tactical display. They've learned something from this engagement. Look how they're moving. It's not according to any tactical doctrine in their captured files. They're adapting in real time, developing new strategies we've never seen before. As if to confirm her assessment, long-range sensors detected new contacts approaching the system. More Zentari ships, but these moved differently than any they had encountered before. Their formations were loose, flexible, almost organic in their structure. They're learning to think like us, Maya whispered. The Zentari aren't just adapting their tactics, they're adapting their entire approach to warfare. Admiral Chen's expression was grim. Then our psychological advantages won't last much longer. Maya stared at the approaching enemy fleet, her mind racing through implications. The Zentari had tested humanity and found them worthy opponents. Now they were evolving to match human unpredictability with their own version of chaos. Admiral, she said slowly, I think the real war is just beginning. Everything up to now has been preparation, theirs and ours. They've been studying us to understand how humans fight, but now they're ready to fight like humans while keeping their own advantages. The tactical display updated as more enemy contacts appeared. The Zentari reinforcement fleet was massive, larger than anything humanity had assembled in one place. But what made Maya's blood run cold was how they moved. Gone was the rigid coordination she had learned to expect. These ships darted and weaved like living things, unpredictable and dangerous. They're not just adapting, she realized with growing horror. They're evolving. We taught them to be unpredictable, and now they're better at it than we are. Captain Reeves placed a hand on Maya's shoulder. Then we'll have to evolve too. The question is, what can humans do that the Zentari can't copy? Maya looked around the bridge at the crew who had become her family over the past months. Captain Reeves with her steady determination. Lieutenant Park with her quick wit and adaptability. The scanning officer who never missed a detail. The communications specialist who could find hope in the darkest situation. We can trust each other, Maya said finally. The Zentari can copy our tactics, our unpredictability, even our chaos. But they can't copy the bonds between us. They can't copy love. On the main viewer, Admiral Chen smiled for the first time in weeks. Then that's what we'll use to beat them. Not superior tactics or better technology. Trust, loyalty, and the connections that make us human. Maya nodded, feeling a calm certainty settle over her. The Zentari had studied humanity for years, cataloged their weaknesses and strengths, learned to mimic their tactics. But there was one thing they could never truly understand or replicate: the power of humans who fought not just for victory, but for each other. The final test was about to begin. And for the first time since the war started, Maya felt ready for it. The final battle began not with weapons fire, but with words. Maya stood on the bridge of Admiral Chen's flagship as a Zentari communication request came through on all frequencies. The alien voice that emerged from the speakers was different from any they had heard before, less mechanical, more human. Admiral Chen. We would speak with the one you call Maya Chen. Maya felt every eye on the bridge turned toward her. In the months since the war began, she had gone from an invisible academy student to someone the enemy knew by name. The transformation still felt surreal. "This is Maya Chen," she said, stepping forward to the communication console. "You are the synthesis mind we have observed," the Zentari voice continued. "We have watched your development with great interest. You have exceeded our projections." "Is that supposed to be a compliment?" Maya asked. "It is an acknowledgement. We underestimated human capacity for adaptive evolution. Your species changes faster than our models predicted. This presents complications." Admiral Chen activated her own microphone. "What do you want?" "To propose an alternative to mutual annihilation," the Zentari replied. "We have studied your tactical innovations, Admiral Chen's daughter. Your ability to synthesize disparate elements into effective strategies suggests compatibility with our own evolutionary requirements." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "You want me to join you?" "We want your species to join us," the alien voice corrected. "The Devourers approach this galactic sector. Alone, neither humans nor Zentari will survive their arrival. Together, we might endure." Captain Reeves leaned toward Maya. "It could be a trap," she whispered. "Of course it's a trap," Maya replied. But something in the Zentari's tone suggested it might also be genuine. "Tell me about the Devourers." The main viewer activated, showing images that made Maya's stomach clench. World stripped bare of all organic matter. Space filled with mechanical constructs that seemed to consume everything in their path. Entire star systems left lifeless and dark. "They are what we once were," the Zentari voice explained. "A species that chose mechanical perfection over organic evolution. They consume biological matter to fuel their expansion, leaving nothing behind. We escaped their initial expansion centuries ago, but they continue to follow our trail." Maya studied the images, her tactical mind automatically analyzing the threat. The Devourers weren't just conquerors. They were an extinction event. Their technology was millennia ahead of anything humans or Zentari possessed. "Why didn't you just ask for an alliance in the first place?" she demanded. "Why the war? The psychological manipulation, the testing?" "Because alliance requires compatibility," the Zentari replied. "We needed to know if humans could evolve quickly enough to be useful partners rather than simply more biological matter for the Devourers to consume." Admiral Chen's face was hard with anger. "So you murdered thousands of our people as a job interview." "We mourned every death," the alien voice said, and for the first time Maya heard genuine emotion in it. But the alternative was the extinction of both species. We needed to force human evolution, to push your synthesis minds to emerge. Maya, Chen was not the only one we identified, but she was the most successful. Maya felt the weight of that revelation. All the death, all the suffering. It had been designed to create people like her. The thought made her sick, but it also clarified something important. "You made a mistake," she said quietly. "Explain." Maya straightened, feeling the presence of everyone on the bridge supporting her. "You think synthesis minds are individuals, special people who can bridge different ways of thinking. But that's not how humans work. Every human is a synthesis mind when they're connected to others they trust." She gestured to the crew around her. "Captain Reeves didn't just follow my tactical suggestions because I'm supposedly special. She trusted me because I was part of her crew. Lieutenant Park didn't question my navigation decisions because she believed in our shared mission. The synthesis isn't in me. It's in the connections between us." "Interesting theory," the Zentari voice said. "But individual capability remains important. Will you come aboard our vessel to discuss terms?" "No," Maya said firmly. "If you want to negotiate, you'll do it with all of us. Not with me alone, not with just the Admiral. With humanity as a whole." Silence stretched across the communication channel. Maya could imagine the Zentari trying to process this unexpected response. According to their psychological profiles, she should have been flattered by their special attention, eager to prove her individual worth. "This is not how negotiations are typically conducted," the alien voice finally said. "Then you'll learn something new about human nature," Maya replied. "We don't have individual leaders who can speak for everyone. We have people who represent the will of the group. And right now, the will of this group is to hear your proposal without giving up anyone as a hostage." More silence. Then, "Very well. We will transmit complete intelligence regarding the Devourer threat. Study it. Consult with your people. When you are ready to discuss survival, contact us." The communication ended, leaving the bridge in stunned quiet. Maya slumped against the console, suddenly exhausted. She had just negotiated with humanity's most dangerous enemy, and she wasn't even sure if she had done it right. "Well," Captain Reeves said dryly, "that was either brilliant diplomacy or the most expensive suicide note in history." Admiral Chen's expression was thoughtful. "Maya, do you believe them? About the Devourers?" Maya considered the question carefully. The tactical data looked genuine. The emotional undertones in their communication suggested real fear. And their behavior throughout this war makes more sense if they were testing us rather than simply trying to conquer us. But they're still aliens who think it's acceptable to murder thousands of people for the greater good, Maya said firmly. "Even if the threat is real, we can't trust them to honor any agreement they make." Over the next 48 hours, Maya found herself at the center of the most important decision in human history. The Zentari data on the Devourers was detailed and terrifying. The mechanical hordes were still decades away, but they were coming, and nothing in the human or Zentari arsenal could stop them. "We need the Alliance," General Morrison argued during one of many emergency conferences. "Our combined technology might give us a chance. We need to be careful we don't just hand ourselves over to a different kind of enemy," Admiral Chen countered. "The Zentari have proven they're willing to sacrifice human lives for strategic objectives." Maya listened to the debates, watched the political maneuvering, and felt the familiar urge to fade into the background. This was too big for her, too important to trust to a former mining colony, nobody who had stumbled into prominence. But then she remembered Professor Martinez's words. Synthesis minds were beings capable of bridging different approaches to warfare. Maybe that was exactly what humanity needed. Not someone to make the decision for everyone, but someone to help everyone make the decision together. "There's a third option," she said during the final conference. "We don't accept their alliance as offered, and we don't reject it outright. We counterpropose." "With what?" Admiral Chen asked. Maya stood and activated the holographic display. showing the tactical situation across human space. A joint defense force with shared command structure. Not Zentari leading humans or humans leading Zentari, but integrated crews on integrated ships. Make the alliance so deep that neither side can betray the other without destroying themselves. That would require incredible trust, Colonel Vance pointed out. Yes, Maya agreed. But it would also prove whether the Zentari are serious about partnership or just looking for convenient slaves. If they agree to truly integrated forces, we'll know they're genuine. If they refuse, then we prepare for war on two fronts, Admiral Chen finished. It's risky, Maya. Maya looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. 6 months ago, none of them would have asked for her opinion on anything more important than navigation calculations. Now they were trusting her with the species' future. Everything worth doing is risky, she said, but the biggest risk is making this decision based on fear instead of hope. The Zentari studied us to understand our weaknesses. Maybe it's time we showed them our greatest strength. Which is? Maya smiled, thinking of her crew on the Relentless, of her mother who had trusted her tactical insights, of all the humans who had worked together to achieve the impossible. Our ability to make family from strangers. If the Zentari really want to be our allies, they'll have to learn to be our family too. And families don't sacrifice each other for the greater good. 3 days later, Maya stood beside Admiral Chen as they transmitted humanity's counter-proposal to the Zentari fleet. It was audacious, unprecedented, and completely insane by traditional military standards. It was also, Maya realized, completely human. The response came back within hours. Proposal accepted. We have much to learn from synthesis minds who think in terms of family rather than individual capability. Perhaps together, we can teach the Devourers something about the power of unity. Maya looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere among them an implacable enemy was approaching. But for the first time since the war began, she felt genuinely hopeful. The quiet girl from the back of the classroom had found her voice, and she had used it to help forge an alliance that might save two species. In the academy, she had been nobody. In war, they had whispered her name. But in peace, she would be remembered as the synthesis mind who taught the galaxy that true strength came not from individual brilliance, but from the bonds that connected all living beings. The real test would come when the Devourers arrived. But humanity would not face it alone.